Andrew Leong is an independent China specialist who joins us now live from Hong Kong. Andrew, what's your take on all this? Not exactly a message of peace by the United States sending a nuclear-powered submarine to an already volatile region. Is that how you bring peace to a region, to the Korean Peninsula?
Of course, there's a lot of double talk there, but I think that the aim is not at North Korea. It's killing two birds with one stone. The other big bird, of course, is China. And if you look at the map, the United States has, years ago, decades ago, have already instituted and circumvent a strategy along China's eastern seaboard, with the first island chain centered in Okinawa, the second island chain centered in Guam, and now more recently, the AUKUS nuclear submarine deal with Australia, and of course, cajoling Japan to be on the American side in containing China, and now with South Korea. And South Korea, of course, had been American airline, but they had been very, very careful until recently, until the change of the South Korean prime minister, and since the new administration in South Korea has been veering more and more on the American side. So if you look at the map, it's completing the encirclement of China with South Korea and Japan, and then with AUKUS in the south, and then the two island chains, and then a deployment of American military assets, and our nuclear submarine. Now, the danger for South Korea, as that I've been warning their diplomats, is that in case of a conflict in the South China Sea, for example, over Taiwan, there's going to be a direct hot war between China and the United States, in which case the assets, American military assets in South Korea would not be the North Korean would not stand idle, because the Beijing is going to ask North Korea to stop the South Korea from using this American military assets, and this would drag and North Korea is likely to take advantage of that to start a war on South Korea. And in fact,
On that note, Andrew,
the South Korean capital, yeah.
Help us understand what is China's position towards the United States militarizing not just the Korean Peninsula, but the region as a whole, including the expansion, the possible expansion of NATO to what some experts believe is to contain China.
Precisely. As I said, I mean, apart from the North Korea, apart from South Korea, Japan, and Australia, and then, of course, you have the Quad with India, and now recently bringing the NATO countries like the United Kingdom and even France and Germany, their warships into the South China Sea, so creating a nation NATO. So again, this is a 360-degree China containment policy on the military side. This is part of the picture. But I think that South Korea would be unwise to allow itself to be used as a pawn on the chessboard.
Well, just finally, Andrew, no matter what military measures that the United States takes in the Korean Peninsula over the past decade or so, we see that Pyongyang is not backing down, not in its missile tests and not in its other military achievements.
No, precisely, because the United States policy towards North Korea has always been on using coercion. For example, at the in the Donald Trump's administration, is trying to use the so-called fire and fury, flying American military aircraft and bombers near the Korean Peninsula, and threatening the security of North Korea. And then while the so-called six-party talks are still going on, and which has been going on for decades, so the North Korea is fed up with this. and doesn't believe in these talks anymore. And that's why North Korea is trying to defend itself, developing its own nuclear weapons and also long-range missile delivery systems with this long-range test. And this is, again, learning, taking a leave from Chairman Mao's book, because Chairman Mao at the time was threatened by a very hostile former USSR, and then even threatening China with nuclear weapons. And then Chairman Mao, gave up the resources for the economy and put the resources on developing a nuclear bomb. So the North Korea is now taking a leaf out of Chairman Mao's book, creating its own self-defense, its own insurance policy. So I think the more coercive, the more the United States is doubling down on this failed policy of coercion, the more North Korea will be strengthened in its resolve to develop its nuclear weapons, and that's no good for the region, no good for its neighbors, and no good for the world.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. Andrew Leong is an independent China specialist joining us live from Hong Kong.